you talk about organizations and infusing energy into them and defrosting the frozen middle, as you talk about, how do you maintain that culture? Because today it seems like the Googles of the world are giving people a lot of granola bars and fancy hardware in the offices. Is that the answer? And what do you do when half of the folks are sitting behind a screen, where you are only one link away from just working at another place? How do you maintain that culture when the whole world seems to be going towards a direction where you don't have human interaction in the same format as we had just some years ago?
Well, I hope we will continue to have some human interaction. After all, that's what makes us human, and that's what brings so much joy in life. But if there's kind of one thing, when I work with executive teams or CEOs, and there's a whole set of principles on structure. What gets measured is what gets managed. You can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if you want an innovation operating system, you want to build that system, it does start with, like, what are you measuring? For example, if you're measuring number of failures, hey, that's really good for the guy making parachutes or the guy building widgets. What's your number of metrics, number of products you're producing per day? But imagine going to the person who's working on kind of new ideas and saying, well, it's Wednesday. On Monday, you had 4.7 ideas. On Tuesday, you had 4.3. And I think it's Wednesday, it's 3 o'clock. We're only at 3.1 ideas. He's going to think you're a moron, and he's going to quit and go to a company that understands managing artists better. So first answer to your question is, what do you measure? And you better be very thoughtful about creating the systems and the measurements and the tools. One is tailored to the artist, which is things that they respond to, and the other is tailored to soldiers. And when I was, running these sorts of organizations, I had a different hat. The questions you ask of artists and what you celebrate with artists, including celebrating good fails, and what is a good fail and how do you celebrate it, is very important. And the question you ask soldiers, the kind of stuff I would review with my CFO on filing, quarterly reports. Did he close books within 15 days, or this month it was 13 days? He was 13 days, let's celebrate. Whereas with the artist or the scientist or the creatives, an original new idea or a great failure through which you learn something. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is kind of one thought. If there was one thing I try to leave people with and try to remind them, it's this. When someone presents to you a new idea or a new project, get out of your vocabulary, just strike out the phrase, that will never work, and replace it with the question, what experiment might we run? That's it. If there was one thing I could wish for every team, that's it. I cannot tell you how many companies have gone down in flames. Nokia was one example because, Martin didn't mention the story, but 2 years before the iPhone launch, there was a small group at Nokia which had been working on a secret project where they developed, a touch screen, a camera, and they came up with this crazy idea. Suppose we here's our totally crazy idea, our loonshot. Suppose we have these little things in the cloud that everybody can download. And they presented it to senior management at Nokia. And what did the senior management at Nokia said? They said, that will never work. Had they rephrased that with, like, what experiment can we run to test our assumptions that it will never work, they might be dominating the phone category today. So that's kind of if there was one thing, that would be it.
Amazing. Guys out there and girls out there, isn't it amazing in terms of simplifying things? In fact, Safi, I just spoke to one of the leading scientists. He actually developed the concept of mirror neurons. And he told me this morning that when you use metaphors, it's not just something you're using, it's actually hardwired into our brain. We have a vocabulary built into us. It's just crazy. Well, that's what Safi is doing very well. Okay, coming up, our next guest was raised in a tofu factory. 30 years later, his design can be found in the permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco. Now, John Maeda is widely recognized as one of the leading experts in the intersection of business and design and technology, or what he calls humanist technologist, named one of the 21st most important people in the 21st century by Esquire. In 1999, he was introduced to the New York Art Directors Club Hall of Fame. He was a professor at the MIT lab for 12 years, served on the board of directors at Sonos and at the advertising agency called Biden and Kennedy. And he also, by the way, joined eBay's design advisory board as chairman. And he is the author of a ton of books, including one of my favorites, which is The Laws of Simplicity. I think Safi will love that one. And his latest, How to Speak Machine. Welcome, John.
So glad to be here. I was listening to Safi's stuff and it's already phase changing my brain. So what a good use of my time. Wow.
So listen, why don't I outsource my job here? Safi, ask John a question.
John, you're now the CTO of Everbridge, is that right?
Yeah.
How do you identify some of these innovation challenges that we were just talking about? How have you seen that play out inside, now that you're not at MIT Media Lab anymore, a place that I love? Now that you are inside a large organization, what are the biggest challenges you're seeing to innovation, and how did what we just talked about resonate or play out in what you see day to day?
Well, I really enjoy how you frame that thinking of artist soldiers, Safi, because I know words are hard to pick, and so those are good enough sort of strong, curiously strong words. And, you know, regardless of where I've been in the past, I see that phenomenon of the phase change problem. Some are ice, some are liquids, some are gas. And you made me think that the challenge of getting the artist and soldier to work together, you know, finding what's in common is so key, as you know. And you made me think about how I'm running off of one of my phones, the Wi-Fi hotspot. It's not perfect. It's gonna break out sometimes, but I have a backup if I can just use my other phone to build an audio connection. I was thinking how both the artist and the soldier are exceptionally good at being able to make do, improvise. An artist without the right materials will find a way to achieve their outcome. A soldier, if in battle, will invent ways to protect themselves if not given the right materials. And so I kind of think that they both have inventive force. And when things are challenging, as you know, that's when people start to actually have to, not necessarily innovate, but improvise. That thing that's in common of the artist and soldier, I find so interesting having listened to you. I, having been a Slurpee person, I'm a Coca-Cola, maybe cherry Coca-Cola Slurpee, who can phase change, as some of us can. And it's a terrible thing because you're not sure if you're ice or water, liquid, or, and sometimes you do become gas. I like this improvisation thing. I'm sure you thought of that. Let me interview you back. Like, what does that trigger in your mind?
Well, you know, that's a great point. I'll go right back to my prop. You see this glass of water? It's not about the molecule. If you look at a molecule of water, is it a liquid or a solid? That's the wrong question. It can be both. Yep. If I take a molecule of water and drop it in this glass, what's it going to do? It's going to slosh around with all the other molecules. If I take a molecule of water and I drop it on a block of ice, yep, what's it going to do? It's going to lock and freeze.